Hello, I'm Bruce Lorincz, and this show is called Bruce on the Loose. I talk to people in city government, the school system, businesses, and companies here in Wadsworth. I'm here today with Bob Parmalee. He's an avid plane pilot. He's done that for several years. And Bob, thanks so much for joining me today and giving some good information to our audience.
I'm glad to be here, Bruce.
Were you born and raised in the Wadsworth area?
Born and raised here and spent my whole life here in Wadsworth, which for a pilot is really a rare thing. To run your whole career and live in the same town is just unbelievable for a pilot.
Yeah. How? When did you get a spark of interest in airlines and airplanes?
Well, it started with my dad. My dad started a model shop in Wadsworth, and we had a big backyard, and we had a U-control, and that's when you flew the airplane on the end of a stick and run around. And so it started when I was probably 8 years old, and just kept going with it. Graduated from Wadsworth High School, and then what happened, my dad owned a trucking company here in town, and I started to work for the trucking company, and it was okay, but I didn't really see myself being in the trucking business. So I went to a school down in Florida called Embry-Riddle, and Aiden, I see, he's got a picture of it up there, and went there and got my ratings. Now, what I did, I first started flying here in Wadsworth. The Wadsworth Airport was, just being built at that time. There's a good picture of Wadsworth Airport in the early days. Just that we had an east-west runway.
What year would that have been, Bob?
I'm trying to think. Well, it'd been 57.
Okay.
Because I started flying at the airport in 57. My dad and my uncle bought an airplane. And I think the idea of that was that my dad told me that he said, I want my Uncle Jack, and he wanted to learn to fly. Well, to be honest with you, I think he bought that for me because I think he took one lesson. But my uncle learned to fly and got his license, but my dad didn't do much with it. But of course, I took lessons. I think, Aiden, you got a picture of the first solo, my first solo up there. Yeah, that was my first solo was in Aranca Chief down at Wadsworth Airport back in August of 1957.
Oh, that's tremendous. Yeah.
Like I say, though, I was working for the trucking company, and I was doing this flying on the side, and I did get my private license here in Wadsworth. But I decided that I'd like to do this for a living. So I went to Embry-Riddle down in Florida and got all my other ratings, my instrument, commercial, flight instructor. And the problem that you have in aviation is you get the ratings, but then you need the experience. The only way to really get experience these days, even still, is to get a flight instructor's rating and start being a flight instructor. So when I came back here from being down there and getting all my ratings and things, I went to work for Freedom Field, which is Medina Airport now.
Right.
But a friend of mine was managing Freedom Field, and he said, hey, you want a job? I said, sure. And he went up there, and I started flying or doing in-flight instruction and some charter work, and at that time, Freedom Field was really busy. We had gliders, we had parachute jumpers, so we were really busy up there.
So it's really true. The more you fly, the more experience you get, and the better pilot you become.
That's correct. That's correct. And that's what, if you want to get a job with the airlines, you have to. I think when I was doing it, they wanted at least 2,000 hours before they would even talk to you. Now I think they're down to 1,500 hours before they'll talk to you.
I think you're correct. NPR had a story on we really have a shortage of pilots. My nephew is going to be leaving the Army coming up, and he's has a couple different inquiries right away as to being a commercial pilot. So we are, and I remember during the baseball season, a lot of players would go. Ted Williams was in the Air Force, and he flew not only at the end of World War II, but also in the Korean War as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what about today? Is a flight school and getting a license tougher today, or was it very difficult early on?
No, it's well, it was a little tougher early on because today there's many more schools. You can go to Kent State, you can go to Ohio State. I mean, Embry-Riddle is still there. It's big, but all these schools are offering flight programs, so it's easier to, and the ground school knowledge to take the test for your private, your commercial, and stuff like that. You get much more help, and online help. You can go online and get all that stuff, help to get the written stuff out of the way before you have to take the practical flight test.
So you get the written test out of the way. Do you have someone, as you're taking the flying test, someone go up like you're taking a driver's test in a car? Does someone go up with you and check to see if you can get the gauges and everything?
Right. After you meet all the requirements, and you have certain requirements, cross-country requirements, and you have to do some night requirements and stuff like that, you go up with a pilot examiner. In fact, I used to be a pilot examiner when I was at Freedom Field, and I could give private and commercial licenses. But that's, again, gaining that experience and doing all that stuff.
Bob, you want to tell me about this plaque we have sitting on the table?
Well,
can you hold that up? And who bestowed that award to you?
Well, this was an award that I got from the FAA. And this is for 50 years of flying and for safe flying, and also it's given out by the Department of Transportation and FAA in reward for that. And it's called the it's the Wright Brothers Master Pilot Award, and
wow.
So like I say, you have to have 50 years of safe flying, and it's an honor. I'm proud to have it.
Congratulations. Not everyone receives that for sure. Now, what about what goes into a flight plan?
Well, that's nowadays. Used to be you did it and you filed the flight plan with the FAA. Today you do it all online.
Okay. Everything's
done online. You make out your flight plan, where you want to go and all that stuff, and then you file it with the, but it's all done online. You check your weather online. We used to have a phone number and you called the flight service station, they called it. Today you do it all online.
I heard the other day, there was an article, I'm not sure what state it was, but it was just a small plane and the pilot had a heart attack and he passed out. And there was a lady on board and she successfully landed with instructions from the tower. I mean, I was just awed how someone, and maybe she had a little background in flying, but boy, I'm sure the tower was very nervous about getting her down safely.
I'm sure they were, and it would take, I would think she would have had some experience of either flying with the person that passed away, or because you have to know one thing, how to run the radio, so that you can talk to the people on the ground that can help you, and you get a flight instructor on there, and they can get you back to the airport, and there's no place safer to crash than the airport. You know, if you're going to crash, that's the place to be, somebody where you can get help. So, but if she had some experience, she can work her way back and make a successful landing. There's been a couple of those incidents. Yeah,
I just heard that and I just said, well, I'm going to have Bob on the show. I need to ask him about that. Tell us about a little background. In the 1950s, started the Wadsworth Airport. Who used it originally and who uses it now?
Well, originally, one of the big contributors, there was a number of them, but Dr. Klotz, Dr. Nevin Klotz he really spearheaded the Wadsworth Airport, and then they had the Wadsworth Airmen's Association, and the city, of course, had the land, and they went to the city and said, could we have this piece of land to make an airport? And the city obliged them and allowed them to make the airport, and then the Airmen's Association did most of the work and made the airport, and we actually raised money and got well, it was a chip and seal type thing where they put down it. So we actually had a hard surface runway and put lights in and all that stuff, and it was all done by the Wadsworth Airmen's Association at that time. Now, since then, the Airmen's Association and the operation has just got so much bigger. They actually, the city has a contract with a company, and they manage it for the city. And actually, we have 24-hour operation. There's someone there 24 hours a day to manage the operation. And of course, one of the reasons for that is that Cleveland Clinic's based there with the helicopter, and that's a 24-hour operation for them. So,
how many women are in the air?
Oh, there's a lot nowadays. I mean, it's very popular for women to fly, and the airlines are very, that's a lucrative thing. Airlines want the women to fly. A friend of my son, his daughter, she's been on, I think, with Delta now for about 6 months. But she started out as a flight instructor to get that experience. She worked, then she upgraded to a medical evac company where they go out and pick up heart transplants and all that stuff and bring them back. And they also pick up patients and bring them in to the hospitals and stuff. And that's a pretty rigorous job because it's 24/7. You're on call, and when something happens, they have to go pick people up or pick a heart up or whatever, an organ of some kind. And but she got her experience that way, and Delta hired her right away, and she's now flying for Delta.
Yeah, there is a pilot shortage now, and again, if some young people are watching the show, you'd probably advise them to maybe look into aviation, and maybe, as you had, it could be a career.
Well, it can be, and it's not only pilot. There's a very big opportunity for the technical people, the mechanics, the radio, the electronics people. All that stuff is in big demand, and nowadays there's schools around the country, and these guys come out of those schools and they get a job right now.
Air traffic controllers.
Traffic controllers.
In the early '80s, there was a strike, and boy, it really crippled the nation, and Reagan stepped in and got them back. And air traffic controller, there really is a need. I knew a couple people at the school I was at, and they got jobs right away. Yeah,
well, with an air traffic controller, the problem with that job is that you train. And I think, and I'm not positive of this anymore, but I think you have to train like 3-4 years before they'll let you control.
Wow.
Be a full-blown controller.
Has the same happened with people getting their airline license or airplane license? Have they speeded that up and maybe cut corners, or do you think they still take their time? It's pretty rigorous.
Yeah, it's pretty rigorous. You still have to go through the same thing. Now, naturally, there's a lot more assistance now with computer simulators and things like that, where they can speed that up a little bit. But the airline experience is, it's. I say in aviation, it's hard to get in, But once you're in,
Right.
you're pretty well set.
So you got to pay your dues to, and you got to know the right people. Like you said, seems like you said that there were people that you knew that greased the skids and got you involved, and you, the more you got in, the more you enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, and I of course, like I said, I worked for Freedom Field, and then I got hired by Associated Developments, which is a company out of Akron. And for them, I flew an airplane, and I you can put that airplane up if you would. It was called the Howard 500, and well, that was the first jet that I flew, and that was for them. But nope, we got the wrong one. But you're getting there.
So it sounds like you flew a lot of different,
well, yeah,
a lot of different models and a lot of different speeds.
This airplane I flew for Associated Developments is called a Howard 500, which was, for a propeller airplane, was a very high-speed airplane. It was about 305 knots that we filed for, flight planned it for. And then that airplane, the jet airplane that he had up there, was the first jet airplane that I ever got to fly. It was a North American Sabreliner, and that was also for
Is that it right there?
That's it right there.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's a North American Sabreliner, and that was the first jet that I got to fly.
It seemed like they're so streamlined.
Oh, yeah,
There's not any place where wind resistance would hurt you.
Well, that airplane was built by North American, and if you remember, the military had a North American F-86 fighter. Well, that airplane was basically an F-86 with a bigger fuselage on it that hauled people. It was almost the same airplane. And then from there, I went to, this is an interesting story. I went to the Weight Company in Akron. And they were a trucking company that hauled mail for the government. And the airplane that I flew for them, we used in a movie. And now this was quite an experience. It was a Convair 440. We had that for Delta Airlines. We bought it from Delta, and we put a corporate interior in it. I think we had it set up for 16 or 18 people. And it normally, an airline, was 55 people. But we were out on the road one night, and we got a phone call. One thing, those things you never hear about. The guy says, "Oh, we're with Universal Studios, and we saw your airplane sitting out here at the airport, and it looks like an airplane that we'd like to use in a movie."
Wow.
They said, "Well, can we take a look at it?" We said, "Sure." So we went out the next day, and we met them, and they had all kinds of people. They're taking pictures and everything. And we ended up shooting a movie up in Minneapolis. It took us a week, and it was a Kurt Vonnegut book called Slaughterhouse-Five.
Yeah, that's a very, very prestigious book, and a lot of people read that. Yeah,
the story of a guy that
Right.
how the war screwed up his mind.
Right.
Well, in the movie, we crashed.
Oh.
What we didn't know is they took an airplane over in Europe, painted it just like ours, took it up in the mountain, dropped it in the mountain, and left it snow on it a few days, and then filmed it up there. And then when they got back here, they called us and said, "Well, we're ready to shoot." So we went up and shot this film. So, but that was an adventure all in itself.
So you flew the plane up to Minneapolis area, and then they took it from there.
We flew it actually
Right.
during the filming of it, and we did a lot of groundwork too. But it's typical movie. You're in the movie for 5-6 minutes, and you're there for a week filming. But so that was an interesting story about that airplane. Then I went to work for a company called Continental Alloy Steel Company in Cleveland, and I flew with them for I think 9 years. And then the steel business, of course, we all know that steel business wasn't so good, and so they sold the airplane. And Then I went to the company that I worked for and retired from was the Swage Lock Company. And the Swage Lock Company was, yeah, that's a picture of the Swage Lock. That's my crew. I became the chief pilot there. And we had a series of airplanes there. And they're still in business. Swage Lock is a worldwide company, so we fly, they still do fly all over the world. I think the last time I looked, I had 140 countries, and of course all the states that I've been to.
I bet you thank your lucky stars that you had a good maintenance crew. They're very, very significant, and they can't cut corners, can they?
No, and it's all today. It's all computerized. In other words, the airplane comes in, and this week we inspect the tail, and this week we inspect the landing gear, and that goes each month. They have so much work they have to do, and by the time the year rolls around, you've inspected the whole airplane.
Even with all those specifications, not too long ago, a window blew out on a commercial plane. Do you remember that? Mm-hmm. And really, people were very upset, and the company came under scrutiny.
Right. Well, believe it or not, that Convair that we had the picture of up there, I had my cockpit window blow out on it. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, it wasn't very high, but it big crack and boom, it was gone.
Unbelievable. I don't want to bring up any bad memories, but can you tell us some tense moments you had? That was certainly one of them.
Well, it is, but I've lost a couple engines. I had to shut down engines and land on single engines and things, but really nothing real serious. I mean, yeah, there were problems and that kind of thing, but they weren't real serious.
Are you always aware when you're in smaller aircraft? Are you always aware of the big commercial airplanes in the air? In other words, is there more air traffic today than in the 1950s?
Oh, by far. But there's also more. We have a thing now called ADS-B, and ADS-B. Every airplane is supposed to have ADS-B out. In other words, you're transmitting your position. You look on a screen and you see the airplanes and see where they're at in your relation to you, how far above you or below you they are. And so that really has changed flying. It really made it a lot safer. A lot safer.
How many different countries have you flown to? And
well, close to 140.
140. Yeah. Is there any airport that's easy to fly into, relatively compared to others?
Well, they're all pretty easy. I mean, there's some places that I can remember being out in British Columbia, and that the airport was in a valley. So you go down the valley and you land, and obviously, if you had a problem, you'd have to be careful getting out of there. I mean, because you were down in the valley and the mountains on either side of you. So those kind of things. But
you knew that ahead of time.
Yeah, you knew that ahead of time.
It wasn't a surprise.
And most of the airports are easy to get in and out of. I mean, there's a few of them that. San Diego, you come in right over the city, you land, and you're right in town. And so there's buildings going by that are higher than you are when you're on the approach and things like that. But, it's just normal.
Do you encourage young people to get into aviation?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. It's a great career. I can't, I mean, I know a young fellow, and this, he's a pilot, but he went to Pittsburgh Institute of Aeronautics. He got his license for mechanics, and he's doing radio installations now in aircraft, and got himself a great career going. He just was sent to a school so he can do it in jet aircraft now, and so really, and that kind of opportunity is out there. And plus flying, I mean, there's lots of opportunities for flying. Unfortunately, it's sort of expensive to get into. It is. There's no doubt about that.
Speaking of that, some of the big airlines are helping, not only speeding up, but they're also, if you sign a contract that you'll fly with them for 4 or 5 years, they will pay your schooling.
Well, they help with it.
Right.
I know there's a fella here that lives in Wadsworth. He's a pilot for Delta. And he was, and I don't think he is anymore, he was the Delta representative to Kent State. So he would go talk to the students over there and encourage them to do the stuff and, you know, give them programs that Delta was offering and things like that.
And young people really are into technology today. You would think they would get a lot more, and especially women. There's no barriers.
No,
as you said, women can do as good a job, or if not better, than the men.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Bob, I really enjoyed talking to you. A little history of Wadsworth and the airport and your career. Thank you very much for all you do, and make sure that people were safe and your cargo and everything was A-OK.
Well,
really
thank you, Bruce. I appreciate you having me.
Enjoyed talking to Bob Parmalee today. This is Bruce on the Loose, and we'll have coming up, the Expo is here, and we will talk to various organizations there. Thank you very much.
You are watching WCTV, Wadsworth Community Television.